18-year-old Melissa Rose Turner was overweight, unhappy with her life, and depressed. In her own words, she said she hated her own body and was going through the darkest moments of her early adult years. You know how they say when you hit rock bottom, up is really the only way you can go? Well, that statement rang ever so true. She would tell a blog in the years to come that she was saddened by the woman she was becoming and wanted to make a change. So she decided to educate herself on health and nutrition, went on to lose 100 pounds over the span of 2.5 years, and fell in love with herself. So much in fact that she started to post nude photos of herself anonymously on Tumblr under the handle Two Thorned Rose. Then, on one drunken night at a party, a girl had shared her own personal experience of how she'd done exactly the same thing, but there was one big difference. It wasn't anonymous, and she made a lot of money from it. The girl proceeded to explain she was monetizing her body via camming. In other words, she'd been on an adult streaming site, performing certain activities, often sexual, on a webcam for monetary gain. The following day, Melissa hopped online, decided she wanted to throw herself in the deep end, and 3 months later, she quit her 2 part-time jobs at Great American Cookies and Haagen-Dazs to become a cam model full-time. However, this wasn't going to be something she did forever. Yes, she saw success on the site, which is fairly rare given how much competition there is, but she only wanted to do it to pocket some money for herself and to pay her debts off. Some 2 years later, there was no sign of her quitting, but the money would eventually dry up as newer models hit the site, so she turned to making her own adult films instead. The following she made via camming continued to follow her on the various social media platforms she had. They would pay her for adult film clips where she often cosplayed different characters. There was other paywall access only content as well via Patreon, where it's thought she raked in thousands of dollars per month, and of course this continued as the years went on. It became that lucrative that, if I get the timeline correct, in roughly 2016 she opened her own studio with her at the time boyfriend. Here, other cam models would attend. I presume they would give Melissa and her boyfriend a cut of the money for use of the space. But for whatever reason, that fell through.
My ex-boyfriend Dickface, after we had been together for a while and I had had so many girls asking me about camming, if I could help them, blah blah blah, he was like, let's start a studio. Let's have cam rooms so girls can come here and cam, because like all the girls that I was talking to like didn't have space at their place to cam. At the time I was just like, yeah, and then that whole studio thing just turned into me doing all the work, me finding the girls, me doing all the editing, all the setup, all the every fucking thing. I did everything, and I'm so goddamn mad because I spent so much time focusing on that, focusing on other people. But I'm so mad that like I spent that time focusing on other shit when I feel like I could have done so much more and be so much more ahead of where I am now if I had put all of that fucking time and effort into me and my shit. But it is what it is. Having the studio taught me a lot about working with other people, working with...
It's not clear if the failed business venture ended the relationship with her boyfriend at the time, or if it was over something else, but if I was to take a wild guess, I'd say it was a combination of the pair. Either way, by the time 2017 swung around, images that have been sourced from internet archives show that Melissa had a new lover, Matthew Trussler. Born and raised in Massachusetts, Matthew had worked as a general manager for an Italian restaurant before moving to Florida a couple of years prior to 2017. Described as a fun-loving, hard-working guy, he'd been drawn to Florida by the sunshine and his brother, who had lived in the Tampa Bay area. There isn't much information surrounding the couple. On his Facebook, his relationship status was single. The pair had shared one picture together, and there was one video, although they hadn't exactly been in frame. With Melissa's social media platforms being wiped from the internet, it's hard to tell if she posted up much with Matthew. However, this image from Halloween 2017 would eerily foreshadow events that would happen 2 years later. Located southeast of the center of Hillsborough County and considered one of the oldest settlements in Florida, Riverview is home to 107,000 residents as of 2020. From amusement parks to shopping, beaches to hikes, Tampa has it all. To no surprise then, in December of 2018, both Melissa and Matthew decided they'd make the step to move in together. Quarter century later, I've got a mortgage, a pup, 4 fur babies, and a wonderful girl. I'm a happy man. I also realised I'm getting older because instead of sleeping in, my ass woke up at 6:30 without an alarm. So the pair seemed like they were set for life. They had everything, and with both making decent incomes from their respective jobs, it was only up from here. The world was their oyster. But they made it into a video, which means that but was most definitely coming sooner or later, and this but happened on one morning in October of 2019. An argument escalates, and within less than a year of moving in with each other, both Melissa and Matthew's lives would be changed forever. From 4 AM on the 18th of October 2019, Melissa and Matthew were picked up on CCTV having an argument. Some of the transcript of what Melissa said has been made public, however, only some of what she said was clearly picked up by the CCTV. From roughly 4:30 AM, sounds of glass smashing is heard, followed by "You stay down." Over the next 15 minutes or so, sounds of punches and slaps are heard, followed by Melissa saying, "Fucking die. I hate you. Get up, get up, get up. So fucking arrogant. I hate you." And "Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself." By 4:45 AM, she's heard yelling, "No, what did I do?" Melissa had just stabbed Matthew to death and left his body on the pool deck, but instead of calling emergency services to come and try and save his life, she waited 4 hours to contact authorities to let them know what had happened. Her story? Well, believe it or not, she had told the dispatcher that she had found his cold, blood-stained body on the porch and didn't know what happened to him, but had tried to perform CPR. Police asked her if she would voluntarily answer some questions down the station. She agreed, but upon doing so, she revealed new details to detectives that didn't match her original story. She said that things had escalated during a fight that morning, but to this day we still don't know what that argument was about, other than Melissa's testimony. Melissa told detectives that Matthew rocked up to the house at 4 AM, drunk, and woke her up from sleeping. She then got irate about it, but he'd been armed with a knife. When she tried to take it, a hand was cut. The cut made her go ballistic, things started to escalate. She was then choked and thrown across the kitchen counter. He then picked up the knife again, but placed it back down, started to strangle her, and so she stabbed him in the back. Indeed, Melissa was found with a slice across her hand, but detectives thought if it was an accident, then she would have dialed 911 straight away and not waited 4 hours to let Matthew die. So they charged her with second-degree murder, a charge that in the state of Florida holds a life sentence. Evidence to back this 4-hour period up? Well, Matthew had been wearing a smartwatch monitoring his heart rate. He had no heartbeat for roughly 4 hours before police arrived. Something else wasn't adding up as well. If this was, let's say, an accident, a state of panic, Melissa was about to die, then why were there numerous cuts to Matthew's body? The medical examiner determined that Matthew in fact had a defensive wound on his right forearm, a large laceration to the upper right bicep, a minor laceration to the middle of his chest, a small cut to the top of his right shoulder, and a large wound in the middle of his back, consistent with the stab wound. It seems as if Melissa's version of events then might have not been true after all. So a trial was to go ahead in February of 2022, and she was granted bail until then. However, there had been arguments in court on whether she should pay for her own defence, given the amount of money she'd been making from online content. Believe it or not, she had bragged about this on a phone call from jail. Melissa was offered a plea deal before trial that would see her serve 25 years in prison. This was countered by a 5-year sentence from her defence. Neither were accepted, so the trial went ahead in February of 2022. In court, the defence claimed that the audio used from the CCTV was being amplified to make it sound like Melissa had been shouting over Matthew, and that the injuries found on the pair showed they both had been struggling for the knife. Jurors had been given the option of convicting Melissa of manslaughter, aggravated battery, second-degree murder, or of course a not guilty verdict, but they decided that the highest charge should be upheld, and Melissa was found guilty on second-degree murder. They determined that she personally carried, displayed, used, threatened, or attempted to use a weapon. An appeal has since been lodged since the verdict was given, and a file has been motioned for a new trial. Melissa's defense saying that mistakes were made that cost her an acquittal. It's in reference to a statement written by a juror in the jury service exit questionnaire. Reports don't say what was said, however the defense said there was no way that a guilty verdict can stand. My assumption would be there was some sort of bias against her from one of the jurors, which if true could definitely fumble the case, and a new case could potentially go ahead soon.
I loved him and I didn't want to do that to him.
Melissa Turner has come a long way from her days as a cosplay model. She is now a convicted killer. A jury found her guilty last month of second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Matthew Tressler. During her sentencing, Melissa claimed she was the real victim, that Matthew had many demons and was abusive. She says on the day of October 17th, 2019, he attacked her first, and she fought back.
I didn't want to do that to him. The last thing that he wanted, and I knew it because he always tried to hide everything, his drinking, his mental health, and how depressed he was. He tried to hide it from everyone. The last thing that he would want was for the world to know any of it.
Her mother saw it too.
I'm her mom. She's never been a confrontational person. She tries to avoid it and hide her pain.
But no one took more offense to the abuse narrative than Matthew Tressler's mother.
The story that you have contrived has caused me as much pain as his death. You and I both know that Matthew was the best thing that ever happened to you.
This is not a story of a poor innocent girl. This is a woman who intentionally isolated and manipulated a good kid away from his loving, supportive family.
Last word went to Tampa judge Samantha Ward.
This jury did not believe her claims of self-defense. Nor does this court.
And with that, the former model will spend 20.5 years in prison. Gloria Gomez, Fox 13 News.